All right, the journey continues.
Warning, this video contains a doctor's rant and explanation of the various pros and cons concerning many of today's most popular diets, including keto, carnivore, vegetarian, and vegan. This series is low in production and high in value. Enjoy.
This is Dr. Anthony Balduzzi from the Fit Father Project and the Fit Mother Project. And what you're listening to is more or less a series of health rants about what I've learned over the past 20 years about this nutrition landscape and why so many people are divided, the difference between the carnivore camp and the ketogenic camp with the plant-based diet camp. And if you're confused about what the heck you should eat, or if you feel like you're in one of these camps and can't see why the heck other people are doing it wrong, I hope to give you some ideas on where I think the bridges are in this conversation, the stuff we can agree on, the true guiding principles, and some of my personal take on this, whether you like it or not, a little bit of 2 cents. So if you missed the first installment of the video, I'm sure there's going to be a link in the description. I'll have my team do that or post a link in the comment. I recommend you watch that because we really got into the science, a lot of the pros and potential cons of carnivore and ketogenic diets and why a lot of people gravitate towards them and do really well on them. Today, we're venturing over to this land over here. We're going to talk about plant-based diets, vegan diets, and what some of the science is saying about this and why there's great benefits to doing things this way and why the heck should this work if this also works and these are so totally opposite, right? Okay, we're going to get there. Now, I need to give you a little preface. I'll do my best to, include links to research when I'm referencing particular kind of things. But I also believe in you guys. You have the ability to also type in Google and find this stuff. What I'm telling you is, to the best of my knowledge, the truest, best stuff so far. And number 2, we're going to leave the ethics discussion and sustainability discussion off the table when talking about nutrition. Because I want us to be able to talk about nutrition without getting caught up in the weeds of being like, well, vegan, vegetarian, because you really want to support the slaughter and big agribusiness. We're going to not make that connection, and we're going to artificially cut that cord. It is something that needs to be included in the broader conversation, but right now we're talking about food biochemistry, nutrition, and potentially some longevity stuff. So, plant-based diets. We know that plants are some of the most nutrient dense. Yeah, they are the most nutrient dense foods. Not to say that animal foods aren't nutrient dense. A lot of stuff in a grass-fed steak or wild salmon or eggs, amazing, powerful nutrients in there. Plants also have their thunder. Because plants are essentially soaking up minerals from the soil, they're rich in minerals. They're rich in vitamins and antioxidant compounds that they produce to keep themselves healthy. But we happen to eat them and they do good things for our body too. So when they say eat the rainbow, there's just a wide variety of different kinds of foods that we can eat that are good. They provide us with, you look at that check sheet of the kind of vitamins and the minerals that you want to get throughout your day. Well, guess what? Eating plant-based foods is one of the best, fastest ways to check the boxes all along the line and get the nutrition, the micronutrition in particular that you need. Plant foods are also lower in calories, so you can typically eat more of them and get less of a calorie load because they have fiber. And the plants, their nutrition is tied up in fiber. And that's a really important distinction. It's also why there's a difference between eating a whole fruit, where the sugar and the vitamins are tied up in the matrix of the fiber, those pectin fibers, and drinking the fruit juice. There's a difference between eating that apple and drinking apple juice. The apple juice will spike your blood sugar. It's very concentrated. The apple itself will have a lower glycemic load. It will time release because of the fiber. And let's get into fiber because plants are essentially fiber and water and vitamins, minerals, and different flavoring compounds and antioxidants. That's really, what they are, and connections of cellulose and different kinds of fibers. We have this complex gut microbiome, from essentially you are a body that's wrapped in skin. And when we say there's a flora, that means the types of species of bacteria that are living throughout your entire connective tissue system, the skin system, externally and internally. And in a way, I want you to start thinking of your body as a tube. You are a tube, and you're a tube that's wrapped in skin. And here's a weird visual, but I could take a piece of floss and tie a rock to it. And if that floss is long enough and I had you swallow it and it somehow survived the hydrochloric acid, it's a very strong floss, I could floss you on your both sides. Terrible visual. Let you sit on that one for a second. But it's a striking visual to illustrate a point, is that you are a tube. And everything we eat goes into this tube, and that tube is where communication occurs. It is where the outside world, things we grab, things we eat and put into our mouth, starts to communicate with the inside world. And this is why your immune system is most concentrated in your entire digestive tract. That is where the most immune cells are. When you think you're getting sick and you think about your immune system, you might be thinking about lymph nodes or your thymus gland. But it's actually in your digestive tract, because your body wants to make sure that when stuff comes in, it is broken down and digested. It interacts with the gut bacteria, which are doing a lot of that breaking down and digesting. It is kicking off different compounds that are small. Digestion is a process of chopping large things into small things and packaging them so they can go through these very fragile cells in the digestive tract, get absorbed into the blood, getting sent through the liver, and getting dispersed throughout the body. That is the process of eating. Getting things, breaking them down, mechanically chewing, chemically hydrochloric acid, and then using enzymes to snip things into small little packages that your body can absorb through that very thin layer of your digestive tract that is so easy to inflame. And then you have all these gut bacteria lining this entire system, and they're interacting with the food. And there's a layer of mucus that separates those bacteria from the mucus, from your intestinal barrier, that's actually absorbing these nutrients from your immune system, that is waiting right on the other side to say, if a foreign invader gets in here, if something that I don't like gets in here, I'm going to react. I'm going to kill it. I'm going to neutralize it. I'm going to kick off lots of different things. Now, this is the dance that's happening in the digestive tract at all times. So when we eat foods that inflame us, or eat foods that are not agreeing with the gut bacteria, what happens is it creates inflammation, and it can create leakiness in this digestive barrier. And those cells that are normally tight, pressed together with that layer of mucus and all the gut bacteria out here, they separate. These tight junctions is what they're actually called. They loosen, and stuff starts to get through. Bacteria starts to get through, the mucus, undigested food particles, and the immune system does exactly what it's designed to do. It reacts. Because it's like, what are these foreign proteins or these bacterial endotoxins doing in my bloodstream? Get out of my house. And they attack. And guess what? A lot of these things look like your own cells too. There's things like molecular mimicry, I guess you could say, where this sugar molecule that somehow got through, or this bacterial endotoxin, looks kind of like your own cells. So your body starts attacking everything in the area, even your own cells. These are autoimmune gut conditions. This is the process through which a lot of them start. Are there other ways? I am sure. Medications, perhaps, genetic predispositions, but this absolutely happens because the communication comes through, the gut barrier gets disrupted, stuff leaks through, immune system reacts, creates inflammation. So this is why we need to eat foods that are helping and healing this digestive tract, that are not inflaming us. Want to know probably the most inflaming food I'll throw out a random number, 90% of people? Wheat-containing products, particularly those sprayed with pesticides, with glyphosate, which guess what? As an insecticide, killing insects on crops, it also kills our gut bacteria. Shocking, right? Well, when those guys die off, different guys move in. And they might not be the right guys in the neighborhood. The neighborhood gets scrappy. Those cells start to leak through. Now we get inflammation. We get autoimmune. Wheat, specifically gluten, creates a protein called zonulin with a Z that opens up those tight junctions, opens them up, more leakiness. And this does not matter if you have frank celiac disease, where you have such an intense immune reaction to gluten that you could potentially die. Your whole digestive tract swells up, and you can have diarrhea and life-threatening circumstances. If you're celiac. If you eat a sandwich and you're celiac, you're done. Or at least you're going to have a major complication from that. But most of us have non-celiac wheat sensitivity. So inflammatory foods. And this brings us to the plant discussion, is the fiber in plant foods. And I'll give you about 4 or 5 different categories. Supports the growth of the good bacteria. When we look at the back of almost all probiotic bottles, we see primarily lactobacillus in different species, and we see bifidobacterium. These are lactic acid producing bacteria. They eat fiber. They chomp on the fiber from the plants we eat. They create short chain fatty acids, propionate, butyrate, the same short fatty acids that are in butter, actually, which is funny enough. Side note, why it looks like you see a giant gorilla that eats grass all day. How is it getting calories? Well, those gut bacteria are converting fiber into fat, and they're living off the fat that their gut bacteria are producing. So we're having this dance in our system too. And so we want to make sure we have species diversity. That seems like a really good idea, to have a lot of different species of the right kinds, and eating lots of different diverse types of fiber is a really good thing. So You've heard of pectin before, that is in apples and citrus. It's in the white parts of those things. That stuff's great for your gut bacteria. They love it. They eat it up all day. Has cholesterol lowering effects, healing for the gut. You have inulin, which is found in artichokes and onions. We have beta glucans, which is found in oatmeal and mushrooms. And we have cellulose and non-digestible fibers too, that have benefits for scrubbing the digestive tract and doing other things. And we don't even fully understand all the different types of fiber and the complex interactions with different types of bacteria, but we do know fiber tends to help the GI tract get the right kinds of gut bacteria, helps us form those well-formed bowel movements, keeps the digestive tract clean. Listen up, carnivores. You think fiber's not important, but I would say as long as you're maintaining regular bowel movements on your diet, you're okay, but you don't want meat sitting in your colon and getting putrefactive bacteria in the colon, fermenting that stuff and potentially damaging enterocytes. You want to move stuff through the system. So plant-based fiber, great. Not too many people besides carnivores right now are necessarily arguing that fiber is bad, especially if it's from a fiber that you agree with. And I mentioned this last time. It is of principal importance for each of us on this planet to figure out the foods that agree with our bodies. And this is why I can't just give you a blanket list of these are the best foods. You kind of can based on nutrient profile, but one of those best foods might not agree with you. And I want you to notice the signs when foods don't agree with you. Upset stomach, gas bloating, fairly obvious. A lot of people find they get redness in areas of their skin. Joints might hurt. You might feel a little more tired. Or maybe you get mucus production and your nose gets stuffy. That's a huge one. Happens to a lot of people when they have dairy. Pay attention to these signs because that's your body's way of saying, hey, this food created an immune reaction that is leading to either irritation of nerves, retention of water, mucus production because the body's literally trying to use mucus to stick on and glue on to the antigen, the thing that's causing the immune reaction. Find out your food allergies. And it's not as simple as food allergy testing. The best way to do it is to do a nice elimination diet, which essentially is what carnivore diet kind of is. You could also do it with all plants, with a juice feast, like I just did. But elimination diet and reintroduced foods, once you know that information, you can start to navigate through the waters of the foods that your body enjoys thriving on, plants or animals, either side of the equation. So fiber, very important in the plant and vegetarian foods. I will also say a lot of the problems essentially, a lot of the benefits of eating a largely plant-based diet is because you're avoiding a lot of the problems that we see on the other side of the animal equation. Those combustible proteins, when you're cooking protein at high heat, you're getting polyaromatic hydrocarbons and the heterocyclic amines. When you're cooking fats, you're getting the dioxins. You're avoiding those issues because you're not scorching meat. Or at least not that often if you're kind of like a flexitarian. But if you're a pure vegetarian or vegan, you're not getting any of those issues. You don't have to worry about how much mercury is in your fish because you're not eating the fish, or microplastics for that reason in your fish. You're not eating the fish. So it's almost like benefits from negation of problems. That's a great thing, right? But your body is also running off a very different type of energetic profile. Over here, carnivore keto, we're running off fats converted to ketones. And here, we're primarily running our bodies with plant-based diets off of carbohydrate metabolism. Now, people make the mistake of thinking too simplistically about how the body's metabolism and energy pathways essentially work. People think that you're either or, and that's with the conversation, the language we use around that is making it seem like it's one or the other. I'm a fat burner, I'm a carb burner. No, you're a both burner. Even if you're eating a high carbohydrate diet, you're still burning fat at some level, particularly at rest. The body loves to burn fat at rest, and it likes to burn glucose at higher intensity levels. When there's not as much oxygen, there's more anaerobic pressure. You're also making ketones all day in some amounts when you're having carbohydrates. I wouldn't say potentially between meals you're making ketones. And they've also shown that even just drinking black coffee in the presence of a high carbohydrate breakfast leads to ketone production. If you go a 16-hour fast and you still have a high carb diet, well, guess what? Part of the day you're producing ketones. And on the other side of the equation, even though you are essentially on a keto carnivore diet, not having glucose, your body still makes glucose from the liver. It can use certain amino acids to actually create glucose because you still need to maintain blood glucose levels. Where are you getting the glucose from if you're not eating it? Well, your liver is going to make it for you because if your blood glucose drops below a certain amount, it's not like you go keto carnivore and you have zero blood glucose. You can go hypoglycemic on this if your body didn't have the mechanisms to. use the gluconeogenesis through the liver, which we do, which is why people over this camp can be totally fine. But point being, you're doing both. That's my main point here. And this is also why we need to understand that energy balance matters. For you to be healthy, energy balance matters. You need to make sure that you're eating the right number of calories based on your height, your weight, your age, your total energy expenditure, how active you are, what your goals are, gaining weight or losing weight. We need to be in the ballpark. And I'm not saying you need to count the exact number of calories, but you have a general idea. Would you ever drive a car if you had no idea how much the gas tank needed? Like, what would you do? Would you like go and guess three gallons today? Let's try 25. You wouldn't do that, but we do it with our bodies in a sense. So we got to start to be a little more aware of generally amount of calories, they matter. Back to plant-based. Avoiding some of these issues essentially with worrying about what our food ate on the animal side of the equation. And there's lots of delicious, ways you can prepare foods. There's lots of great things about fresh fruits that have all that fiber that can give you that sweet, sugary taste that you like, but it's not as bad as, I wouldn't say it's bad at all to have fresh fruit. It can be phenomenal. People stop being afraid of blueberries. If you're on the carnivore keto camp. Yes, unless you're doing a pure ketogenic diet and you want to intentionally stay in ketosis, then the berries are fine. They're going to give you good energy throughout the day, and ultimately we need calories. I just got done with a juice feast. I mentioned that in the last video where I did 2 weeks of only juices. I was getting a lot of vegetable juices, but I was also getting sugar from fruits. And listen, your body can handle, carbohydrates when your metabolism's clean. This is why people on very high carb diets, fruitarian diets, or even 80-10-10, they're getting most of their carbohydrates from starches, potatoes, rice, squashes, maybe some pastas, things like that. Like, they're still doing okay. The body's essentially chopping those long carbs into short carbs, into sugars, absorbing them, doing its thing. And you're not having to worry about getting a lot of, the toxic load of other things. But you do have to make sure that if you're eating plants, you're eating the right kind of plants and not ones that are damaging you. So if I was eating beans, for example, which is a very lectin containing category of plant foods, I would make sure that I'm pressure cooking them or soaking them like traditional preparation. We soak our beans, you throw out the water, and then you cook them because we can get a lot of these anti-nutrients out of them and we can get a lot of these lectins and stuff out of them. And if you leave those stuff in there, it can make people feel bad. And plants can trigger autoimmune issues. So you got to find the plants that work for you and you got to prepare them correctly. And some plants are not meant to be eaten. There are anti-nutrients like phytic acid, which is, found in a lot of different types of plant foods. And this is why traditional preparation of these plants, sprouting, fermentation, soaking and removing water are essential to having healthy plant foods if you're going to have them in your diet. And there's also certain plant foods that do better cooked than raw. It's probably a better idea that you cook your kale than eat a giant raw kale salad because that's all heavy cellulose. It's like that thick leaf that your body really can't break down. You're not going to get a lot of the nutrients because the vitamin K in the kale, a lot of it's trapped in that dense cellulose. And you've pooped out kale before if you've eaten kale. You've certainly pooped out corn before. Well, guess what? Certain things the body can't break down needs help. So there's certain plant foods you got to know how to prepare those too. And in that particular way. So let's make this a little more practical. When I think about eating plant foods, I'm going to talk about fruits first. I believe that fruit, unless you are strictly on a ketogenic carnivore diet, can be a very fantastic thing to include in anyone's diet, particularly the fruits that are highest in the special nutrients like blueberries, high in proanthocyanidins. They're amazing compounds. They're great for our eye health, our heart health, our artery health. They're just really amazing. I recommend we eat the lower sugar fruits, like lots of berries. But here's the thing when it comes to this whole category of fruits and veggies. We also need to bring in the concept of pesticides. Insofar as we're afraid of eating Roundup sprayed wheat, because we know that's not good for the microbiome, you also don't want to eat pesticides on your fruits. There's a group called the Environmental Workers Group, EWG. They produce a list called the Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen. And the Clean 15 are the lowest pesticide fruits and veggies, so things you can buy conventionally. The Dirty Dozen are the things that are sprayed the most. You might want to buy these organically. So for example, something like on the Clean 15 list is a banana. Why do you not have to worry about buying an organic banana? Although I still think we should support organic farming, is that the skin on the banana is so thick. You peel that thing back, there's nothing touching the inside of the banana you're eating. Potentially okay, right? Melon, same thing, a cantaloupe. But something like a berry that has a very thin skin. Think of a raspberry, stuff sprayed on that. It's direct contact with this thin, squishy skin. Pesticides can get inside there. and like strawberries sprayed heavily with pesticides. I would buy things in the Clean 15. So particularly things I think about that are beneficial fruits that I like to include in my diet: organic berries, organic apples. Those are like the two main that I personally eat. And I will buy a banana on occasion because they're good on occasion. And they are also a nice source of fiber, particularly when they're more green, feed that gut microbiome. So we got to look at, when it comes to the fruits and the veggies, buying organic, buying the right kinds, and make sure they work with our bodies. Now, a lot of people in the carnivore side of things are talking about issues with eating greens, right? They're like, don't eat your green vegetables. Spinach is very high in oxalates, and oxalic acid is going to lead to inflammation and crystallization in your arteries, and it's going to lead to kidney stones. Well, turns out they're right if they're talking about inorganic oxalates. So oxalates that are cooked. Spinach that is cooked is high in inorganic oxalates. Organic oxalates, non-cooked oxalates, seem to have the opposite effect. They seem to help with your gut health. They seem to not form kidney stones and may actually help protect against them. So the form and the temperature, this has been a core message throughout here, through which we got that food, is essential. So on the note of temperature, next topic in this plant thing is the same issue that we had with animal foods, cooking them at high temperatures, combusting them. We have that with plant foods as well. We do not want to cook things to the point where they caramelize. Toast that has that brown on it creates two different things. One is acrylamide. And that is essentially like an amino acid that gets mixed with a sugar, and this stuff is cancerous. And I think around 60 to 70% of people eat it when they're eating cooked starches. Potatoes in particular, like French fries, pretty much never have anything that's fried in crappy trans oil. Like one of the worst things you could do for your health is combine crappy vegetable oils at high temperatures with carbohydrates. Hence why a lot of the keto people are doing good. They're getting rid of all that BS. And they're also getting rid of all the wheats and stuff like that. But when we have things that get caramelized, like that piece of toast, or the caramel color on sugar that gets burnt, these things are called advanced glycation end products, AGEs. And what these essentially do is, imagine sugar as a sticky molecule. And when it's floating in the bloodstream, it can bind to things. And guess what? It can bind to the hemoglobin, the iron transporting compounds in our blood. And that's why when we measure you for diabetes, one of the things we look at is your glycosylated hemoglobin. What percentage of your hemoglobin floating in your blood has sugar stuck to it? And when you have a high HbA1c, that means you're getting a lot of these sticky sugars, probably from high heat carbohydrates, sticking to your hemoglobin. And that, we know, creates this whole metabolic syndrome leading to prediabetes, into diabetes, into Alzheimer's, into this whole glycation issue that starts to take off in our lives. So we want to make sure that we're not eating high heat carbohydrates, which means we're not eating processed carbohydrates. What are some carbs that you could include in your diet? The sugars in fruits. They're coming in the package of fiber. They're much different than drinking juices. Check from there. I think there's benefit to getting the fiber from oatmeal. What I like to do is soak my oatmeal. Traditionally, we're preparing that way. Soak the oatmeal, 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar to remove the phytates, the phytic acid, neutralizes it. You have oats, low glycemic food, great in fiber for the gut bacteria. And you can throw so many other great things in there, like the berries, the nuts, and make a really powerful, amazing meal. Could be good for your health, fitness, bodybuilding efforts as well. Those are carbohydrates I like. Potentially sweet potatoes or root vegetables that agree well with you, if that works for you. Potentially some kinds of rice on occasion. If you are an athlete and you have high energy demand. What do 99% of bodybuilders pretty much eat in their contest prep, besides the ones that are doing low carbohydrate? They're eating chicken and rice, or chicken and sweet potato. If the carbohydrate agrees with you and you are an athlete and you have great insulin sensitivity, you can have rice, your blood sugar will rise and come right back down, and the carb is clean and it doesn't affect your GI tract abnormally and you're getting good poops, then hey, you can do just fine with that. The problem is when we pair a high carbohydrate diet, which naturally stimulates insulin production, with inactivity and with bad compounds that are also damaging the body from the angle of free radicals and oxidative compounds. That is the issue we have. We have a lot of sedentary people who are sitting on their butts, not moving their bodies, and then eating a lot of carbohydrates. Carbs, again, our body burns fat primarily at rest because we like burning fat. Carbs Great for fueling exercise, although you can totally run on keto too if you choose to go that energy pathway. But that's why if you're insulin sensitive, you could eat a big bowl of rice. Your blood sugar is going to rise. Your insulin will rise after that, clear that blood sugar out, and then it'll come right back down. So it's not as simple as saying carbs cause insulin resistance. It's like, how are you sleeping? Are you missing sleep? Okay, well, that's another factor. Are you exercising? Oh, you strength train 5 days a week? That's a pro factor. So it's like, you got to look at the whole big picture. We can't be as dogmatic black and white because that's how this stuff works. It's complicated, man. It's not just a single switch on anything. I would say though, if I had to give a balanced macronutrient ratio, me personally, I would say like, because you want to get a lot of healthy fats in your diet, because you want to get some high quality proteins in your diet from both plant and animal sources potentially. And because you want to get, lots of fiber in your diet, it's not like your carbohydrates are going to be above 60% of your calorie intake. They may be more like 20 to 40%, and you can base that based on how your body responds. Listen, certain people do better on low carb diets than others. Certain people tend to have like more bloating to carbohydrates. You got to kind of figure out your body. And that's why we're talking about, this kind of cognizant, conscious, food testing all the time, being like, I ate this, what's this? Just adding more consciousness to the feedback your body's always giving you. Okay. And I think most people can pretty much benefit from eliminating wheat from their diet. Certain people might say, hey, Dr. A, what about fermented breads like sourdough? If it works for you, you can have it. What I'd say is probably suboptimal from the fact that it raises zonulin, which opens up that tight junction in the gut, perhaps. But you want to eat a variety of plant-based foods because the different types of fiber you get give you more good fiber for your gut bacteria, and that's always a good thing. Now, what I want to say here is I want to talk about fermented foods because most of these are plant-containing foods, and I believe everyone should do 2 things per day. Aim to get one high-quality fermented food in your diet, and 2, get one, unless you're purely carnivore, disregard this piece of advice, one diverse organic salad in your body per day for lots of different kinds of fibers. We'll get there. First, fermented foods. Fermented foods contain the probiotics and the prebiotics. Prebiotic means the fiber on which the probiotics thrive on. Probiotics are the bacteria. Prebiotic is the fiber. Fermented foods have both. Things like sauerkraut, things like kimchi. These are like those fermented cabbages. Phenomenal sorts of probiotics. That's one of my go-tos. You can get kefir from coconuts, which is, we'll talk about dairy in the next installment of this series, but kefir from coconuts, good on the probiotics. You can get a lot of prebiotic fiber from inulin, from apples, from all these different things. You know what? Honestly, look up a list of the best probiotic containing foods. There's other things. There's soy-based ones with like maybe natto. Like there's lots of different kinds. Find one that you love. It may be pickles that are fermented. It may be sauerkraut, kimchi. Have it daily. Also consider potentially having some apple cider vinegar daily with the mother. A lot of great things with apple cider vinegar, particularly in the morning. Take it before meals. It lowers the glucose response. You eat 100 grams of carbohydrates and you normally get this kind of spike. You take the apple cider vinegar before, 20 minutes before, you get a lower spike. Apple cider vinegar influences digestion, shifts the probiotics around, seems to be very healthy. Shout out to Bragg's. You guys are an amazing family of doctors that really changed the world. So I recommend you buy Bragg's apple cider vinegar with the mother. But fermented food is very important. You want to get fiber once a day. So one huge salad in the middle of the day would be an amazing habit for you to start getting into. Get some organic leaves, probably not kale, softer leaves that are easier to digest, spinach, spring mix, dandelion greens. Throw in some of your favorite veggies that are not inflammatory for you. Got to know what those are. Could be a mistake if you are inflamed when you eat tomatoes or bell peppers. If you throw those in there, that could trigger some problems, right? But you got to figure out the ones that work for you. Could be a good time to sneak in a little bit of avocado or guacamole in there. Could be a good time to throw on some sprouted nuts and seeds in there. Whether you are including animal proteins in your diet with a more paleo style or not, these plant foods are the best ones to contain. I would say an amazing salad would be like a bunch of different kinds of greens, a huge tub. Like I'm talking a big salad with some sprouted pumpkin seeds, with an avocado, sprinkle on some hemp seeds, maybe some celery stalks in there. That would be amazing. And if you can tolerate tomatoes and they don't inflame you, it'd be great for the lycopene and the vitamin A in the tomatoes, maybe some carrots. Just get variety of fiber into your body. Your body will thank you for it, and your digestion will also likely thank you for it. So, what do we learn about carbohydrates? I think they're best raw. is I'll go out there and say that. I think that the fruits in their natural state are best raw. I think it's a problem if you cook lots of potatoes at super high temperature and stuff like that. Certainly a problem if you fry your carbohydrates. Although obviously you're not eating rice raw, but that seems like a pretty clean carbohydrate for a lot of people to enjoy. And I would say you get a lot of carbs from your raw salad once a day. And I'd say also that if you're trying to clean up your body, it'd be a better idea to lower the carbohydrates for a while. Give your pancreas a break. Let's lower the insulin levels. Let's lower the blood sugar levels. Let your cells get sensitized to the glucose again. So lower carbohydrate, but I didn't say eliminating, does really well. So I mentioned in one of the previous videos, my team and I run 2 companies called the Fit Father Project and the Fit Mother Project. And we have a Fit Father Project program and a Fit Mother Project program. In that program, we give them a lower carb diet, not necessarily pure keto, although some people choose to take it to that next level. It's a personal choice. It's not necessarily better, but lower carbohydrate diet. And then we clean up their insulin signaling. And they're primarily getting their carbohydrates after exercise. When your body becomes like a sponge after you strength train, you have these things called GLUT4 receptors, glucose receptors, that come up onto the surface of your cells. And after you train, you get this translocation, and it easily sucks in those carbohydrates into your muscle cells, into your glycogen stores, into your liver. And this is a phenomenal time to have carbohydrates after exercise, and you're getting the right kinds and the right amounts. If you want to have some fruit, have it after exercise. Have it before you eat food. And this is another kind of segue. I know where we're going. Jump, 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 jump. But watch these videos multiple times and explore each of these topics more deeply. They're absolutely amazing. Fruit is something we need to look at food combining when we're talking about plant-based foods. You want to upset your digestive tract? I will give you an experiment. Go eat a heavy meal. Let's say it's any kind of meat or fish or beef. And then have, right after that, have a bunch of fruit. Have 2 cups of fruit, any kind of fruit you want. Dare you to have pineapple or even watermelon, a very fast, watery fruit. It will screw up your digestive tract because fruit is a very fast digesting. It's got those simple sugars. We can break it down. Doesn't mean it necessarily skyrockets your blood sugar. It just means our bodies can process it and eliminate it quickly versus a steak. Fruit goes through you a lot faster than a steak does. Have your fruit first. Let it enter and exit the digestive tract before throwing more complex things over top. And this is why food combining has a lot of validity and not enough people talk about it. If you think about the process of eating, we're putting stuff into the body. And once we do that, it needs to be broken down. And there is a particular environment chemically that works best for each given food. Proteins need acids to break them down. That's why carnivores, lions have acidic stomachs. That's why we have acidic stomachs. Hydrochloric acid, we can break down proteins. The environment that breaks down that protein and that steak optimally is different than the environment that breaks down that watermelon. More alkaline environment, particularly in the small intestine, for making sure that those enzymes, those carbohydrate enzymes, the amylases, all those things like that, the sucrases, that they work. Higher pH, lower pH, problems when they're combined. So this is why we need to take things and really consider food combining. Guess what combines well with meat? Green veggies, salad plus protein. Guess why people feel also good on ketogenic and carnivore diets? They're not screwing things up with food combining, less bloat and less gas, because you're pairing greens with protein or just protein by itself. So if you are going to go into the deep plant kingdom, which I do suggest, because there's so many amazing foods, and I don't think we need to be restrictive to get the health gains we want, then you want to also pay attention to food combining. Fruit is typically eaten best on its own. Although certain subacid fruits do work okay in salads with greens. But typically the whole fruit for dessert thing is a bunch of crap if you actually care about your digestion. Have the fruit first, let it exit the system. If you want to have fruit and also have a salad, have the fruit 30 minutes before, then have the salad. Give the body time. A lot of things to think about, man. I mean, this is the price of knowledge. As we gain more wisdom and we're so thirsty to understand the mechanisms of these things, it opens up Pandora's box on what is optimal now that we understand. Ultimately, if I had to give you a blanket piece of advice on what you should be eating a whole foods diet that contains the highest quality food possible. Organic fruits and veggies that agree with your body and don't inflame you. So you got to know what those are. And if you're including animal foods, these animals are eating what they're supposed to be eating. Cows are eating grass. Wild salmon is eating a natural diet. High quality foods. The foods you eat well, and the foods have to agree and eliminate from your digestive tract quickly. Lots of ways to do that. So that's why there's lots of diets that fit the bill here. We're going to pause here, 35 minutes. I will shoot one more video likely in this series, and I'm going to open it up to questions on topics you'd like me to dive deeper on. We've covered a lot of stuff about nutrition, and I mean, this is just like, I'm giving you the surface scratch of each of these different topics, but the point of this is actually to paint a tapestry of a conversation so we can look at everything and kind of see how these pieces fit together. And trust me, I know I haven't covered everything, but I think I have led to a lot of these different niche topics that we can start to see how they interact, especially as it relates to nutrition politics. So pause for now. Thanks for listening to me again. If you like this stuff, check out our Fit Father Project, Fit Mother Project YouTube channel, subscribe. And if you want me to do more videos like this, like kind of ranting health stuff, please let me know in the comments and give me a thumbs up and share this. If this actually taught you something, or if the last one taught you something, also part 1's linked below. Part 3 is coming up. Thanks, my friend.